Welcome back to Coin's Numismatic series, where every coin has a story, every date can hold a secret, and sometimes, an ordinary-looking quarter can turn out to be a fascinating piece of American history. In this video, we are focusing on two important coins, the Philadelphia 1776 to 1976 Bicentennial Quarter and the Denver 1776-1976 Bicentennial Quarter. We will uncover their history, examine their designs, explain their mintages, discuss the errors and die varieties collectors search for, explore their market values, and most importantly, explain what separates an ordinary bicentennial quarter from one that deserves serious attention. So, before you spend that old quarter, look carefully at the date, the mint mark, the surfaces, and especially the details of the design. Because in the world of numismatics, tiny differences can sometimes make a very big difference. 1776 to 1976 Bicentennial Quarter. The 1776 to 1976 Bicentennial Quarter is one of the most recognizable commemorative circulating coins in United States history. It was created to celebrate the 200th anniversary of American independence, and unlike an ordinary Washington quarter, it carries the dual date 1776 to 1976. That unusual date immediately identifies the coin as part of the nation's bicentennial coinage program. The story behind this quarter begins several years before the anniversary itself. As the United States approached its 200th birthday, the federal government and the United States Mint began planning special coinage that would allow millions of Americans to participate in the celebration. Congress authorized special reverse designs for the quarter, half dollar, and dollar. The goal was not simply to make collector coins, but to place these historic designs into everyday commerce. The United States Mint projected extremely large production numbers, including at least 1.6 billion bicentennial quarters. Production increased dramatically as the anniversary approached, with quarter production for the period ending June 30th, 1976, running about 140% higher than the comparable period of the previous year. There is also an important point that often causes confusion among new collectors. Although the coins carry the dates 1776 to 1976, they were produced during both 1975 and 1976. The Mint did this so that the special bicentennial design could be produced in sufficient quantities for circulation. That means you should not assume that every coin was physically struck only during the calendar year 1976. The Philadelphia issue has no mint mark, and that absence is itself an important identification feature. If you find a copper-nickel-clad bicentennial quarter carrying 1776 to 1976 with no mint mark, you are generally looking at the Philadelphia circulation issue. NGC records the Philadelphia mintage at 809,784,016 pieces. The coin is a copper-nickel-clad quarter with a copper core, weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures about 24.3 millimeters across, and has the familiar reeded edge of the Washington Quarter series. The obverse retains John Flanagan's familiar portrait of George Washington. Washington faces left, with liberty above his head and the national motto, "I in God we trust," appearing to the sides of the portrait. But the date is completely different from a normal Washington quarter. Instead of a single year, the bottom carries 1776 to 1976, visually connecting the nation's founding era with its bicentennial celebration. Turn the coin over, and this is where the bicentennial quarter becomes truly distinctive. The reverse was designed by Jack L. Ahr, and features a colonial drummer standing beside a torch surrounded by 13 stars. Those 13 stars symbolize the original 13 colonies, while the drummer evokes the Revolutionary War era and the patriotic spirit of the nation's founding. United States of America surrounds the upper portion of the design, quarter dollar appears along the lower portion, and E pluribus unum is positioned between the drummer and the torch. The design was exclusive to the bicentennial quarters and was never continued as a regular circulating reverse after the bicentennial program. That historical significance is a major reason collectors continue to pursue these coins. This is not simply another Washington quarter. It is a physical representation of America's 200th anniversary, produced in enormous numbers and placed directly into the hands of ordinary Americans. Now let's talk about rarity, because this is where many online claims become misleading. The Philadelphia Bicentennial Quarter is not rare in circulated condition. With more than 809 million pieces struck, there are enormous numbers of examples surviving today. Finding one is easy. Finding one in exceptional condition is a completely different challenge. According to the NGC Price Guide, as of July 2026, circulated examples of the Philadelphia 1776 to 1976 quarter are generally valued around 50 cents to $1.50, depending on condition and market circumstances. NGC lists substantially higher values for exceptional mint state examples, with the highest grades reaching dramatically higher levels in the guide. The important lesson is that the date alone does not make this coin rare. Condition, certification, strike quality, preservation, and variety are what can transform the value. When examining an uncirculated specimen, look carefully at Washington's hair, cheek, jawline, and the lettering. On the reverse, inspect the drummer's uniform, drum, hands, torch, stars, and lettering. A coin with strong luster and minimal contact marks can be much more desirable than a typical circulated example. One of the biggest attractions for advanced collectors is the search for unusual die varieties and mint errors. But this is an area where caution is essential. Not every blurry letter, flattened detail, filled die, or damaged edge is a valuable mint error. Coins can be scratched, struck against other coins, exposed to chemicals, or damaged after leaving the mint. A genuine mint error normally has characteristics created during the minting process itself. Collectors may encounter off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, broad strikes, missing or incomplete clad layers, and other minting anomalies. Some errors can carry premiums, but the value depends heavily on the exact error, its severity, authenticity, condition, and collector demand. Another major point of interest is the existence of special San Francisco bicentennial issues, including 40% silver collector versions. These should not be confused with the standard Philadelphia copper-nickel-clad circulation quarter. The mint produced special 40% silver bicentennial coins for collectors, and the silver quarter has a different composition and weight. PCGS notes that the 40% silver composition was authorized for the bicentennial issues and was an unusual one-time use in U.S. quarter production. So, if you have a 1776 to 1976 quarter, the first question is not simply, how much is it worth? The first question should be, exactly what version do I have? Check the mint mark. Check the composition. Check the condition. Check for recognized die varieties. Then compare the coin with reliable grading and auction information. For collectors, the appeal of the Philadelphia Bicentennial Quarter is therefore a combination of history and accessibility. A beginner can find one easily and begin learning about grading, mint marks, varieties, and errors. An advanced collector can search thousands of pieces for superior strike quality or a recognized variety. And a historian can appreciate the fact that these coins were literally distributed throughout American commerce during the country's bicentennial celebration. The most important lesson is this: the ordinary example may be common, but the right example can still be collectible. And now we move to the second coin, where the story becomes even more interesting because the Denver issue combines enormous production numbers with documented double die varieties that have attracted serious attention from specialists. 1776-1976, D Bicentennial Quarter. The 1776-1976 D Bicentennial Quarter is the Denver Mint version of the famous Bicentennial Washington Quarter, and that small D beneath the portrait is one of the first things every collector should learn to identify. At first glance, the Denver coin may appear almost identical to the Philadelphia version. It carries the same dual date, the same George Washington obverse, the same colonial drummer reverse, and the same copper-nickel clad composition for the normal circulation issue. But the D Mint mark tells us that this coin was produced at the Denver Mint, and the Denver issue has become especially interesting to variety collectors because of documented double die obverse varieties. The Denver mintage was enormous. NGC records 860,118,839 examples for the 1776-1976 D circulation issue. That makes it even more plentiful in absolute production than the Philadelphia issue. So again, The ordinary circulated example is not a rare coin simply because it says 1776-1976D. But this is where numismatics gets exciting. Within that huge production run, die varieties occurred. One of the most important categories associated with the Denver Bicentennial Quarter is the double die obverse, commonly abbreviated DDO. Two major varieties identified by the Cherry Picker's Guide are FS 25-1976D 101, generally called FS 101, and FS 25-1976D 102, generally called FS 102. CoinWeek notes that both varieties have been attributed by major grading services, including PCGS and NGC. The FS 101 variety is particularly interesting because the doubling can appear in several areas, including Liberty, the motto, and the date. Early die state examples may show especially noticeable doubling in the motto. FS 102 is associated with moderate doubling primarily on Liberty and has been described as potentially much scarcer. This is precisely why experienced collectors do not simply search for a 1976 D quarter. They search for specific diagnostics. When examining Liberty, do not confuse ordinary strike weakness or machine doubling with a true double die. A genuine double die originates from the die-making process, while machine doubling generally occurs during the striking process and can produce a very different appearance. The distinction can be subtle, which is why serious collectors often use specialized references and professional attribution services. The dates 1776 to 1976 should also be examined carefully. Look for separation, notches, secondary outlines, or other documented characteristics associated with the recognized variety. The motto "I in God We Trust" can also provide useful clues on appropriate FS 101 examples. The reverse remains the spectacular colonial drummer design created by Jack L. H.R. Look closely at the drummer's body, the drum, the folds of the uniform, and the surrounding inscriptions. The 13 stars and torch remain among the strongest patriotic elements of the design, tying the coin visually to the 13 original colonies. The Denver mint mark is found on the obverse. That D is extremely important when building a collection because it distinguishes the Denver circulation issue from the Philadelphia issue and helps identify the specific die varieties associated with Denver production. Now let's discuss market value, because this is where condition becomes absolutely critical. For an ordinary circulated 1776-1976 D quarter, NGC's July 2026 guide places typical circulated examples in approximately the 50-cent to $1.50 range. That is a useful reminder that most bicentennial quarters are not automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. However, the same NGC data show a very different picture for exceptional certified examples. The guide reaches as high as $4,750 for the highest listed mint state level on the standard D issue. NGC also lists the DDO variety separately, and the current guide similarly shows circulated values around 50 cents to $1.50, while exceptional examples can reach several $1,000s in the guide. These figures should never be interpreted as a guaranteed selling price. A price guide is not the same thing as a completed auction result. Actual market value can vary depending on grade, certification, eye appeal, population, variety attribution, buyer demand, and the venue where the coin is sold. This is particularly important for high-grade modern coins. The difference between an attractive MS-65 example and a much rarer top-grade example can be enormous. A coin can look perfect to the naked eye and still receive a lower grade because of tiny contact marks, weak strike characteristics, or surface disturbances. For that reason, collectors should avoid cleaning these coins. Polishing, rubbing, chemical dipping, or abrasive treatment can permanently damage the original surfaces and potentially reduce collector value. A natural, original surface is generally preferable to an artificially brightened coin. Another major area of interest is mint errors. A 1776-1976 D quarter can potentially become much more interesting if it displays a genuine striking error. Off-center strikes are among the easiest types for beginners to recognize because part of the design may be missing from the planchet while a crescent of blank metal appears around the struck area. Other possible errors include clipped planchets, broad strikes, die breaks, and missing clad layer errors. However, the presence of an unusual appearance does not automatically establish a mint error. Environmental damage, post-mint damage, or circulation abuse can create deceptive effects. A serious collector should compare the coin with established error references and consider professional authentication for a potentially valuable piece. The Denver Quarter also has tremendous historical appeal because of the sheer scale of the bicentennial program. The government wanted the public to participate in the celebration, and these coins achieved that goal on a massive scale. They were not hidden away exclusively in museum collections. They circulated through stores, banks, cash registers, vending machines, and pocket change. That means a person finding a bicentennial quarter today is holding something that millions of Americans handled during one of the most important national anniversaries of the 20th century. And that historical connection is perhaps the strongest reason these coins remain popular. The market for bicentennial quarters is divided into several different levels. At the entry level, there are ordinary circulated examples, which are inexpensive and readily available. Next are attractive uncirculated coins with strong luster and minimal marks. Then come high-grade certified pieces, where population and condition become increasingly important. Beyond that are recognized double die varieties and significant mint errors, where rarity and specialist demand can dramatically alter the value. For anyone searching pocket change, the most practical approach is simple. First, identify the date. It should read 1776 to 1976. Second, check the mint mark. No mint mark indicates Philadelphia, while AD indicates Denver. Third, inspect the condition. Look for original luster, sharp design details, and minimal contact marks. Fourth, examine Liberty, the date, and in God we trust for possible double die characteristics, especially if the coin is a 1976 D. Fifth, inspect the reverse for unusual striking characteristics. And finally, if something genuinely unusual appears, do not clean the coin and do not assume an internet asking price represents its true value. Compare it with documented varieties, professional grading information, and actual market transactions. The 1776 to 1976 and 1776-1976 D bicentennial quarters teach one of the most important lessons in modern numismatics. Rarity is not determined by appearance alone. Hundreds of millions were produced, yet individual die varieties and exceptional condition examples can become highly collectible. A coin that is worth only a small premium in circulated condition can become dramatically more desirable when it combines a recognized variety with outstanding preservation. And that is exactly what makes the bicentennial quarter so fascinating. It is common enough for almost anyone to find, historic enough to deserve a place in a collection, and complicated enough that specialists can spend years studying its varieties, dies, errors, and high-grade populations. So the next time a 1776 to 1976 quarter lands in your hand, don't dismiss it simply because you have seen thousands of them before. Turn it over. Study the drummer. Check the stars. Examine the lettering. Look for the mint mark. Inspect the date. And if it is a 1976 D, take an especially close look at Liberty and the other known double die diagnostics. Because while most bicentennial quarters are ordinary collectibles, the right combination of variety, condition, and authenticity can make one surprisingly valuable. This is Coin's Numismatic series, and remember, the real treasure in coin collecting is not just finding an old coin. It is learning how to recognize what makes that coin special. Keep searching, keep studying, and never underestimate the history hiding in your pocket change.